Okay, on behalf of everybody, on behalf of DNA rather, I'd like to welcome everybody to today's webcast on simplifying your budgeting process with TrueSky, the budgeting solution that is tied to your Sage Standard Accounting System. My name is Jim King, and I'm the project manager here at DNA. Our presenter today is Alan Whitehouse, who is the chief software architect at TrueSky, and from what I've read on LinkedIn, he's an all-around nice guy. So without further ado, I'm going to hand the microphone over to Alan, and I'm going to change my screen. So on my screen, just so before I do that, just a brief agenda of what we're going to do today. And at the bottom, you'll see there's another event next Thursday that we'll be hosting. And a reminder to everybody that we do have a new YouTube channel, and we will be sending out links to that for this recorded demo. So now, Alan, I just got to figure out how to give you the tone.
So if you make me presenter, or I can request.
Where's that now?
Let's see.
Give keyboard a nice, no, make presenter, there we go. All right,
All
so
right.
now you've got the screen, and yeah, there we go. All right, over to you.
Great. All right, well, thank you, Jim, for having me. All right, I'm going to go through some slides really quick just to kind of give you an overview of what we do, and then I'm going to show you some software. TrueSky, we've done quite a few projects with TrueSky integrated with Sage 300, and so I hope that a lot of this will, what I'm going to show you will show you how you can alleviate some of your budgeting processes. So, what are we going to kind of cover in this presentation today? Well, first we're going to talk a little bit about the pain that you guys are experiencing doing budgeting. So as Jim kind of gave me the overview of a lot of you, it seems that you guys are using Excel as your primary tool for doing budgeting and forecasting. And that's kind of what we're going to focus on as far as this presentation goes. We're going to talk about the implications of doing budgeting and forecasting with Excel, and what what that kind of means to your business. We are going to then talk about our solution, what TrueSky brings to the table, and what are some of the benefits that you might see by deploying TrueSky within your organization. All right, so let's talk a little bit about that pain that you're feeling. Okay, so probably the number one thing that I hear and feedback that I get from organizations that are still using Excel to manage their budgeting and forecasting process is at the end of the day, the numbers don't add up. And why is that? Well, that's because you've created all these different interlinked workbooks and worksheets, and all it takes is for one user to go and add a row, delete a column, change a formula, put text where you thought a number was going to be, and then you're riddled throughout with all that hashtag REF or hashtag value error, and then you spend a lot of time trying to track it down. So again, at the end of the day, the numbers don't add up. Because it takes so long to get the numbers out of, say, ACPAC or Sage 300, and excuse me if I go back and forth using that term, and because you have to manipulate it and get it into the right format, you'll find that the numbers are outdated. They're older than what you'd like, and the process also takes way too long, so you're always working with what seems to be like outdated numbers. And you're making decisions based on imperfect information. You really don't have that insight into what people were thinking and wondering about when they're doing the budget.
Alan, I'm not able to hear you.
Is this better?
That's better.
When did I cut out? How far back?
The screen with implications.
Okay, so talk about the implications here. Sorry about that. It looks like I accidentally brushed against the mute button on my mic there. All right, so the biggest implication we see is a lot of lost productivity in your organization, and there's a huge amount of hurry up and wait within the process, right? Because you're waiting on somebody else to, to get the worksheets to you. You're waiting on somebody else to get that piece of information to you, to answer your question. So if you were to look at the number of people that are involved in your process and add up just that amount of time where they sit around waiting, it's a big cost to your organization. There tends to be a lot of finger pointing. If you've ever heard, okay, where did those numbers come from? Well, you must have changed those numbers. No, I didn't. You changed them. I don't know where they came from. And at the end of the day, people tend to start losing confidence in the numbers. They start losing confidence in the people that are putting numbers into the system, and they start losing confidence in the whole process as a whole, and they start questioning, what is the value of us doing budgeting at all? I've yet to have somebody that say that the process doesn't take too long from start to finish. And at the end of the day, that process is costing you money. Well, what is the solution? Well, the solution is TrueSky. And if I want to break it down to its most the quickest way I can describe it is that TrueSky simplifies the budgeting and forecasting process for companies using Excel. Now, we are considered what is called a corporate performance management solution. And what does that mean? Well, first, we give you tools that allow you to securely and quickly capture information from the right people in your organization with the right knowledge. In fact, we actually facilitate getting more people involved in the budgeting process and getting more people that are closer to the action, who know their piece of the puzzle the best, yet have all that information roll up automatically in real time with no additional amount of work. We provide you tools that allow you to compare your budgets and your forecasts to your actuals to see if you're actually meeting those goals. Excuse me. If you determine that for whatever reason things are not going according to plan, we provide you tools that allow you to do analysis on those and try to figure out, why are we off? Why are things not going according to our plan? And then ultimately you can package that information up and present it back to your stakeholders, who can use that information to reforecast, replan, and kind of go on that cycle of continual improvement. Well, what are some of the improvements that you're going to see in your organization if you deploy TrueSky? Well, the biggest one I want to talk about is the amount of how much quicker you can speed up the budgeting and forecasting process and remove and reduce the amount of effort. So what I have up on screen here is what I see very typical for organizations that are doing the once a year big budget cycle. And traditionally it starts about 120 days out. And if you look at the chevrons up top, that's kind of how you spend a lot of your time, especially if you're in an Excel environment. So you spend a lot of time creating different input worksheets. And why does that take so long? Well, you're creating one different worksheet. You're scraping data out of your, out of ACPAC, out of Sage 300, or out of some of your other systems. But you're manipulating it, and you're creating, multiple worksheets. You're creating one for each individual user, or for each location, for each department, whatever the case may be. And that's because Excel, by default, is not a multi-user system, and that's the only way you can really manage, security and so forth. And then you spend a lot of time having your people do input. And why does it take so long? Well, it's a couple things. Many times the layouts are not that conducive to doing budgeting and forecasting, and also your users don't have the information or the tools to help get them through the process as quick as possible. And then, you do a little bit of a review, and then it comes to that purple box, which is probably the biggest pain I hear about in using Excel as the budgeting process, is that painful merge. And again, that's where everything goes to hell, because people have added rows, they deleted columns, and you spend a huge amount of time trying to troubleshoot why things aren't adding up and trying to come into that one comprehensive budget. And then you got to do some more reviews because you've edited numbers, and then you've got to do some quick modifications. And by the time you get ready to present those final numbers to your board of directors, your owners, your financial institution, your regulatory body, whatever the case may be, you've rushed. And you don't have answers to all the what-if questions that you're going to get answered. So you have to spend time, and you have to come back and modify that budget and give them answers before you can finalize it. Well, in the TrueSky world, you're going to see something like what you see down below, where you have budget input templates that automatically render for each individual user and cycle forward automatically from budget cycle to budget cycle without you having to do any real additional work. That you have layouts and tools that get your people in and out of the system as quick as possible. that the merge goes away completely, and we handle all of that automatically for you, and that you gain that little yellow section there, and you get time to do analysis and strategy on your numbers, to work through all those different what-if scenarios that you're going to get asked for by, you know, the powers that be. So when you go to present it, you've got all that information and all those answers ready, and you can finalize the budget much quicker. Really, that's the value that we bring to the table. So with TrueSky, what can you build? Well, you can build unlimited different data models depending on your business and what you need to capture and report against. So this is just one example on the screen, but it does not have to be your example. So as an example, we've got a financial model that is very much GL based that you're maybe doing your SG&A type expenses against, that's pulling data out of Sage 300. And maybe we have a dedicated revenue model that's allowing you to do sales forecasting by customer or by product or by customer or by product that is also pulling information out of the subledgers of Sage 300. But also maybe it's combining data that you've got in Salesforce or Microsoft CRM or whatever CRM solution or some form of professional services automation solution that you might have there. And then you might have a compensation model where you're doing all of your budgeting and forecasting for salaries and wages that's pulling data out of your HR and payroll system, but it's also pulling some revenue numbers because maybe you've got a commission component to it as well. And all of you can build whatever kind of data models you want with TrueSky and feed them from multiple different data sources, because we also realize that all of the data that you may need to do effective budgeting and forecasting may not be found in Sage 300. Well, what is the real magic that we bring to the table? And then I'm going to launch it and show you the software. And this is going to really talk about how you generate assignments, which are input sheets, and how you generate reports, which are read-only type documents. Well, within your organization, you're going to designate someone who has a role of designer, and they're the person that builds input sheets or reports. And they're going to actually use Excel, the same Excel that you've been used today, and build what we call a template, which is Excel integrated with the TrueSky environment. Now you may see this as kind of strange, considering I just spent a lot of time talking about some of the problems of using Excel as your budgeting solution. But TrueSky firmly believes, from an end user interaction and an end user point of view, that Excel is absolutely the best tool you can use to do budgeting and forecasting in. It is a tool that is a huge amount of maturity. It's 25 years old and has a depth of breadth of features and functionality that are unparalleled by any other application in the marketplace. When people come into your organization, they know Excel. If you've been doing budgeting today, you know how to use Excel. So people are familiar with it. They're comfortable with it. Even if they don't like doing budgeting and forecasting, they're comfortable with the tool. So we allow you to leverage Excel completely throughout this process, but we're going to give you all the controls and security and things that Excel lacks. So once you have your different templates for your different business processes created, keep in mind that everything we do is stored in a single back-end database. So from an IT point of view, you've only ever got one thing to worry about. You're not ever emailing Excel workbooks back and forth or dealing with shared drives. So you've got your templates created. And then somebody who's an administrator, could be the same person as the designer, is going to take a copy of that template. And they're going to combine it with security settings. Who can see what and work with what data, what departments, what GL accounts, whatever, and what your approval flows are. And they're going to create either an assignment or a report. Assignments, again, allow for input. Reports are read-only. But the really magic happens is that when each individual user goes into the system, they're going to get their own copy of that assignment or report in Excel that they can manipulate within parameters that you prescribe, but all the data that is stored is saved in that back-end database and immediately available for everyone else to use. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get out of PowerPointing you to death and show you some actual TrueSky. So let me go ahead and end the slideshow here. Now, up on the screen, everyone should be seeing Excel, okay? And this is the same Excel that you're used to working with today. So look at, home, insert, page layout, all the traditional tabs. And then here's where we come into play. This little tab that gets added into Excel on your desktop here. So first thing I'd like to point out is, you know, we support multiple languages. So again, those of you up in the Ottawa area, I would wager that more than one of you might have a component of your business that also needs to deal with the Quebec side of the border there and dealing with French. So TrueSky is ready to go for multiple languages. So as an example here, I've got language packs installed for English, Spanish, and French, and we change the user interface appropriately. So half of your users can be working in French, the other half can be working in English. In addition, we not just handle the user interface, we also deal with the regional settings for if you have a French install of TrueSky or of Excel, meaning most of us are used to working with a comma as our thousands separator when we're looking at numbers, and a period as the decimal separator when you're working with numbers. However, if you say are, in Quebec, traditionally you would see a space for the thousands separator and a comma for the decimal separator. We handle that as well. So people can be working in an environment that is comfortable for them, and yet data is stored in one way, enter in one, view it on another. Okay, so I'm going to go back to English here. The rest of what I want to show you is based off of the hub here. Now the hub is this, as the name implies, the central area where the users go to interact with TrueSky. Everything a user has to worry about is going to be here off of the hub. So again, I'm seeing assignments that I have access to, reports that I have access to, and because I'm also one of those designers, I'm seeing templates, the raw Excel documents that are used to create assignments and reports. Under assignments, I have some groupings here. So under my annual budget cycle, I have 4 things that I have to work on. I have to do administrative expenses, travel expenses, sales revenue, and project revenue. Under reports, I have access to an ad hoc report and a corporate income statement. This is the list that I see. Another user comes into the system, and based on their security settings and what has been published by an administrator, they may only see 1 assignment and 1 report. So again, we start to spoon feed information to your users. So again, as you're rolling out a new application to end users, user pushback is always a big issue. And again, training is always a big issue. Well, we're allowing you to basically spoon feed what people have to worry about. They only have to worry about what they see in the interface here. You don't have to say, oh, well, this is the shared drive, you ignore this, you use this, and so forth. Again, it's all handled for them. I'm going to focus on admin expenses for the rest of this presentation. A couple things that we do. We support things like start and end dates. So you have the ability to control when individuals can begin working on the budget and the forecast, and you can automatically lock them out at a date that you prescribe, so you don't have to ever worry about edits happening after you thought things were finalized. So again, you're going to have that centralized control that Excel by itself lacks. We also have a complete workflow approval engine, if you choose to use it, that allows you to route your numbers for approval. So on one hand of the equation, we handle the very simple, 8 users report to 4, report to 2, report to 1, that kind of perfect pyramid. But on the more complex side, we handle things like I'm responsible for doing data entry for Department A and Department B. But Department A goes to 1 user for approval, Department B goes to yet another user for approval, yet IT spend goes to a 3rd person for approval. After it's approved, it all comes back to 1 individual at level 3 for the next level of approval. So we handle things like split approvals or dotted line approvals, whatever term you want to use there. And again, that's something that you're going to be able to configure to your organizational needs. So I'm going to go ahead and open now my admin expenses, and what it's doing is going out to the server and bringing back a template and rendering it specifically for me and what I am allowed to work with. First tab that they're seeing up here, we tend to give some guidance and some instructions. Again, people aren't budgeting every day, and I'm sure most of you are happy that you're not doing a budget every day. So we like to roll out some instructions, remind people how to work with the system, what some of your guidance is, like kind of any cuts that have to happen, or don't forget you have to increase over here. But of all what I want to work with is here under the Input tab where you see the filters. So you're going to be able to have different ways to slice and dice your data based on your organization and your budgeting process. So I'm doing kind of admin expenses here as an SG&A kind of entry. So mine's going to be very much GL oriented. So I've got a slicer here for department, I've got a slicer for location. I've got a slicer for version because we handle unlimited versioning. Start with version 1, copy it to version 2, copy it to version 99, what have you. And I have a slicer for currency as well because we support multi-currency budgeting. So again, if you've got operations that go cross-border, some can be budgeting in Canadian dollars, some people can be budgeting in US dollars, and you can calculate that back. So again, now the slicers that you deploy in your organization are going to be completely up to you and the business process that you're modeling, and you're going to have control with that. If I wanted to work with a different department, I could simply click on my edit button and be given a list of the departments that I have access to. And again, this list will shrink or grow based on security and the user. We also give you hierarchical or tree views of your data, which are really great from a reporting point of view. So I can choose to run a report and bring it back for my Toronto HQ, or I can say, you know what, I want to run it for my Toronto operations, throw in my Ottawa operations, and throw in my Vancouver shipping and receiving. And when I ran the report then, it would either aggregate those numbers up into one number or go ahead and lay them out on columns side by side depending on the layout. Well, I'm going to bring back data for my admin department for the Toronto HQ. And what it's going to do now is going out to the system and bringing back the most up-to-the-second numbers that I have available to me. Excuse me. I'm going to close my filter bar here just to save some real estate here. And what you see up on screen is my layout for me and this business process. Your layout can look completely different. What's on rows, what's on columns, color shading, font control, the formulas will all be up to you and your deployment and how you want it to work. I'm budgeting 3 months at a time, showing 3 months of actuals and 3 months of variance. You could be budgeting 12 months at a time. You could be budgeting 60 months at a time on a rolling forecast basis if that's what your business requires. I am budgeting here again on a monthly basis, but you could be budgeting on a daily, weekly, quarterly, or yearly basis if that's what you want. You know, revenue could be on a daily basis, SG&A financials could be on a daily basis, whatever the case may be. I'm budgeting on a monthly here, but you could also be doing things like 13 periods in a year, or if you're retail, like that 4-5-4 kind of setup. We also support having things like I'm going to do some entry on a calendar year and other entry on a fiscal year. Enter on a fiscal, report on a calendar, and vice versa. Again, the system is very configurable to what you need to work with. When I want to start putting in data as a user, I just simply come in here and I can start typing in numbers just like Excel. I can do a copy paste just like in Excel, and I can do a click and drag, whatever that's actually called. I don't know the real name for that, just like in Excel. And if you look at the formula that I am typing in here, this is an Excel formula, not an Excel-like formula. There are other applications out there that do budgeting and forecasting, and you'll see that they do Excel-like. So you kind of get the functionality, but not all of it. You've got to learn some new formulas. That is nothing but an Excel formula. And the moment I hit save, my numbers are saved at the back-end database where any other user that has the same security rights to these same series of numbers can see them in real time. There's no kind of emailing Excel workbooks back and forth. There's no document check in and check out. No kind of cubes that need to be reprocessed. All of this is available to you in real time. All right? So, but we're not just that wild, wild west of Excel. So if I was to try to go over here and change an actual, you're going to see I'm locked out from making changes. If I try to do that, insert a row or delete a column as an example, those things that tend to break using Excel in a multi-user budgeting environment, those have been restricted in this kind of environment. However, if I'm the kind of user that loves using my data bars as an example, you're going to see that that functionality is kept alive. Again, your users are going to be able to come in here and pick up using TrueSky very, very quickly, because often we can even replicate the kind of budget templates you're using today, and they get to use all the knowledge they already got. So you've got less pushback from your end users, and you get that rapid adoption, less confusion, less stress for everyone involved. All right, but we're more than just Excel. You know, we've added things in that you're completely missing in the Excel environment today. So the first one of those items that I want to talk about are audit trails, something that Excel lacks completely. In TrueSky, anytime you make a change to a number, we tag what was the change, what was the date and time that the change was made, who was the user, and what was the assignment or integration that ran to change those numbers. This is what avoids any kind of finger pointing down the road where people have said, hey, those are my numbers, somebody else must have changed those numbers. Right here you've got a complete trail of all the changes that have been made throughout the course of time. And if I find a number that I like better, I can actually copy that number back. So again, you've got all of that control and auditability that you lack today. Other things that we've brought to the table that take you beyond just traditional Excel. We here at TrueSky, big believers in the concept that getting the qualitative aspect of budgeting is just as important as the quantitative. So the numbers only tell one part of the picture. You really need to know what your individuals are thinking when they're budgeting those numbers to kind of know whether or not the budgets are in any way, shape, or form going to be close to reality. In Excel today, you're probably, if you are doing this, you're probably using that right mouse click and adding a comment. The problem with that in Excel is those comments are tied to the workbook. And when you got to try to roll up all of those worksheets or workbooks into your master budget, you lose all of that great commentary. Well, we've taken that concept and kind of taken it a step further. And we allow you to add unlimited notes. But in our example, the notes aren't tied to the worksheet or the workbook. They're tied to the data itself, and the notes flow with the data. So you can add as many notes to a piece of data as you want. We tag who was the user, what was the date and time that that note was added. And if I wanted to add a new note, I simply come down here and click New Note, if I could type today, and add my new note. I can even add an electronic attachment. So if I have a business case in Word justifying this value, I can add it as a note. If I have a PDF quote from a vendor for a new piece of equipment, I can add it as an attachment. If I've got a backup spreadsheet or a backup email, I can add it as an attachment. And again, these notes go with the data and are immediately available in any other input sheet, any other report where this piece of data resides. And that way, when I'm going through the review process and my boss is looking at these numbers, they'll know what I was thinking, what was the commentary. They can say, okay, that makes sense or not. 6 months from now, on a budget to actual report, you'll also know what people were thinking, rather than trying to make all those phone numbers and emails and trying to go back through all your records to try to figure out where these values came from. You can also attach notes to actuals and variances. So kind of on a reporting point of view, if you want to explain why your numbers are high or low, you can do that. And again, we have the ability to kind of give you indicators, so you're not guessing where the notes are. You're going to actually go through here and you're going to see where the notes are. You can hover over it and you can actually see that little indicator there and get a full quick view of notes, and they can be printed out at the end of the day if that's what you need to do as well. So those are a couple things we've added, but let's talk a little bit more about what we've added to the system that takes us beyond just Excel. One of those is a whole series of data manipulation tools. The goal of these tools is twofold. One, get your people in and out of the budgeting process quicker. So give them some tools that allow them to rapidly manipulate the numbers. But at the same time, having your people in and out of the system going quicker doesn't add any value to you as an organization unless you increase the accuracy of those numbers, which is what these tools also do. So I'm going to show you some examples of those. Well, let's say I know how much I'm predicting for these 3 months in my head, or these 12 months, or those 60 months, whatever the case may be. I could go cell by cell by cell and put in a value. But let's say across these 3 months, I'm going to do $12,000, right? Well, instead of going cell by cell by cell, I can come up here to my data tools. I'm going to type in 12,000. And you see on my drop down, I've got quite a few choices here. I'm going to show you some of these. And in this example, I'm going to select even from my drop down. And I'm going to go down here and press replace. And you'll see immediately it took that $12,000 and it allocated it over those 3 cells. And had I highlighted 5 or 6 different cells or 7 different cells and done that, it would take that $12,000 and allocate it evenly over those different cells, again getting data into the system quicker. Well, maybe you want to take that a step further. Maybe you know you have some seasonality to your business. Maybe you are a summer camp where you've got high expenses and costs in the summertime, or maybe you're a ski resort, which is just the opposite in the winter. If you have seasonality to your business and you can define those rules, you can build those rules into TrueSky. So I've got a rule that's set up that the start the first quarter, or the first month of every quarter, we have a bump up. So now when I do that 12,000 and I select Start High and I hit Replace, you'll see that it allocated more to January and less to February and March. Well, that's great, but maybe to think about all your ebbs and flows, maybe the best way to look at that is what you did last year. So here you can see my actuals last year went low, high, low. So now maybe I want to base it on that. So I'm going to select actuals and hit replace. And what it did is it took that $12,000 and allocated it on the same ratio of how my actuals had last year. Well, that's a couple different usages of it. Well, let's show a couple more different usages. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to type in, I'm just copying some numbers here randomly. I'm trying to give some, fill in some cells here. So let's say I've done a lot of work, I've put all my numbers in, and I've submitted for approval, and my boss comes back and says, you need to cut these sections by 23.5%. There's really no good, easy way to do that in Excel, other than going cell by cell by cell. Maybe you copy it out to another worksheet, you do some formula work, sum it up, you copy it back in. Well, instead, I'm going to go up here, I'm going to type in 23.5, and I'm going to choose percent for my drop down there. And now I'm going to hit the decrease button. And every time I hit decrease, those cells decrease by 23.5%. Or maybe, you know, it's kind of miraculous. My boss gives me the okay to go on a spending spree. Now I'm going to choose value and increase. And now every time I click on that, you'll see that my cells increase by 1,000. So again, giving you that rapid data manipulation. Well, let's say the final thing I'm going to show you here is, let's say I've spent a huge amount of time working on my ebbs and my flows. Maybe I'm responsible for budgeting for multiple locations or multiple departments, and I've, you know, spent hours and hours getting all of my allocations correct and how I want my money apportioned. And I go and I highlight these cells and I see, you know what? Oh, I'm at $95,000. And I'm thinking, there's no way that my boss is going to approve $95,000, but I know I could get, say, $80,000. Instead of having to start all over again with all of that, I can simply highlight these cells and I'm going to hit $80,000. Okay? And this time I'm going to choose my budget and I'm going to hit replace. And what it did was automatically allocated that same, it reduced my number to my total to $80,000, but I kept all of my ratios the same. So I've really solved for this goal. So again, the use of these tools is designed to get your people in and out of the system quicker, but also increase the accuracy of your numbers. All right? So, other thing that I want to show you, again, better data to make better information out of, is many times in the budgeting process, especially if you're doing something like SG&A I'm doing here, you're rolling out a template that's very GL-based. And something like this, employee training, maybe that's as far as you take it down to your GL. But you roll this out to a department manager and ask him or her to budget employee training, and what do? Well, they probably end up stop what they're doing. They create their own spreadsheet where they type in all of their team members, what classes they're going to take, what month it's going to be, and what the dollar is going to be. And then they sum that up and they copy and paste that into your template. And we really see there's two problems with that. One, you talk about why budgeting takes so long and why people dislike it so much. And that's a perfect example. So one, they're having to do the budget in the first place, which is change from their day-to-day job. So it's kind of that, oh, now I got to do this when I've got other stuff to get done as well. So they already dislike it. But then even in the middle of that budget process, they have to change their thought process yet again and do what they see as additional work just to get you a number for doing something like employee training. But what's even worse is that backup documentation with all that great information in it, odds are that spreadsheet stays on their desktop or gets deleted. And 6 months from now, when you're doing budget to actual reporting, you have no idea what they were thinking and they don't remember either. So we let you do those kind of roll-ups online in real time. So right now I'm going to expand here and you can see these are the classes I've budgeted for in employee training. And if I want to add another training class, all I do is go up here to my toolbar and say add detail. And right there I'm given a new line which I can rename, call it whatever I want, so you've got that distinction there. Type in what is my value, And now when I hit save, not only does it save the top line numbers, but it saves all of these detailed numbers. And these detailed numbers travel again with the data. So when I go to submit for approval to my boss can look at this and say, hey, Alan, I think you're going a little heavy on training. I think you need to cut it back, without having to email me back and forth or call me to find out, okay, what were you thinking on the budget here for training? Or 6 months from now, on a completely different report, a budget to actual report that's got a completely different layout, and we see that we're under budget on training, I'll be able to say, well, you know what? Why is that? Well, Mary left the organization. We didn't have to send her on these 2 training classes, which is why we're under budget. Again, trying to give you more information at your fingertips, make the budgeting process far more collaborative, get everybody on the same page. All right. As I've been entering in data, you've probably seen some of these little indicators on the side go from red to yellow to green. And I'm going to put in a big number there to show you that again. That is our visual clue that you've got some data validation issues going on. So if you remember here on my instructions tab, we put some rules in here about increases of greater than 20% over last year are not acceptable. Well, very few organizations do true bottom-up budgeting. Usually what happens is you have some overall goals in mind, or you've got some rules that go into place where you have to do these kind of edits here. Don't forget, you've got to cut here, you've got to increase here. Well, in a traditional budgeting environment, especially with Excel, how do you handle that? Well, usually somebody types up the guidance in an email. You send out the email, people open the email, they read the email, they close the email, they delete the email, and then they ignore the email, and they submit whatever they want. And that's a problem because that's why budgets get rejected, and there's that back and forth, that extra back and forth that causes delays and ends up chewing up time. Well, with TrueSky, you can actually put those kind of validation rules and build them into your budgeting process. So I've created a rule here. And again, these rules can be as narrow or as broad as you want them to be. It depends on your organization and your specifics. That says for any given cost line item, it compares this year to last year, and if my increase is between 0 and 10%, you get a green, no problem. If you're between 10 to 20, you get a yellow, and if you're an increase of greater than 20%, you get a red. Now we've given some visual indication here, but I can also click on my validate button here, and it will specifically show me all of those areas where guidance isn't being met and give you specific reasons why you haven't met that guidance, that you're over 20% here. Again, these can be as broad or as narrow as you want. These can also be integrated with the budget approval process, such that when I go to submit for approval, if I've got greens across the board, great, it goes in clean, no warnings, no messages, no nothing like that. If I've got a yellow, then you know what? We're going to give you a warning that says, hey, you know what? You're kind of outside of the prescribed guidance, but you know what? We're still going to let you submit anyhow, but keep in mind that it might get rejected. Or if you really want to get control of the process, you can say if you've got a red, well, guess what? We're not going to let you to submit for approval because it's going to get rejected anyhow, and all you're doing is wasting people's time. All right, so it's a great use for that. We've also had clients use it in a complete reporting environment. So as an example, I have a client whose CFO has a report that she generates every month that's about 1,400 lines. And she's looking for any account where she's had an increase or a decrease over the last month by greater or less than 5%. She used to have to scan this line by line by line to find those handful, those 10 or 15 items that she wanted to drill down and find more investigation on. With the data validation, right away she gets the visual clue, and she can use the alert pane over here to immediately be taken to those areas that allow her that she needs to look in and drill down on and ask questions about. Again, she's been able to manage more by exception and saves her a huge amount of time. And again, this is the kind of thing that you're going to be able to control in your organization and through your usage. All right, so next thing I want to show you is, again, one of the ways that we make your people more efficient and get more information on things. So mentally, I've been doing as a frontline data entry person here, but now let's kind of assume that I am a reviewer, that these numbers have been submitted to me for approval. And I'm looking at them, and if you remember here, if I pull up my filter pin again, I was budgeting in Canadian dollars. So I'm going to show you one example, and I'll show you how you can use this feature in multiple different ways. But let's say I'm a reviewer in the States, and I don't know what the exchange rate is today or how this carries out, right? So what would I do if I wanted to find out that 3,591, what is that in Canadian or in US dollars, right? Well, odds are I'd go maybe out to the web, I'd try to find a currency exchange website or go to my bank and try to navigate a bank's website, which is always a nightmare, and find that exchange rate page. And I'd pick Canadian dollars and I type in the amount and then pick that I want to go to US dollars and then get the value there. All right, so instead of doing all that work, if that's something they do on a day-to-day basis, maybe I'm going to give them a quick link. And you see what's going to happen here. I'm going to go up to my links and I'm in that cell and I click on click links. And what pops up is a web page, and it's going to immediately take me out to a currency exchange website, and it knew what cell I was on and what the value was, and I knew that I was in Canadian dollars and to bring back US dollars, and it gives me that value. Now this is not hard-coded, it's dynamic, so if I go over here and click on this cell and run it again, you'll see that it passed the 4,000 value and brought back the 3,000 exchange rate. So how can you use this more in real life in your organization? Well, one, if you've already invested in SQL Server reporting services or Crystal reports, and you've got a whole series of reports that you've already built in those, well, you can actually use this tool to launch those reports and automatically filter it by department, so whatever department I'm budgeting for, or by location or by GL account. Again, saving your users having to go out, launch another application, open it up, retrieve data, filter it automatically. You can save them steps, giving it at their fingertips. If you're doing revenue budgeting, and you've got a list of your customers, maybe you want to show them on a Google map. So I could automatically launch Google and it would bring up a Google map with that user's or that customer's location highlighted on it. Or if you've got applications that have web-based interfaces, maybe your CRM is Salesforce that has a web-based interface and you're budgeting for your customer or for a salesperson. You could launch CRM and bring up that application or any other web kind of application that you can pass parameters to. So it can be used a whole lot of ways. There's even one other way that we can use this kind of drill to detail type function, and this really sets us aside from a lot of other applications that are out there, is how we do this. So let's say I'm again reviewing this. And I'm going, okay, $152,000 is what they spent in Q1. How did they spend that money? Well, maybe I'm somebody that doesn't actually have access to ACPAC or to Sage 300. I can't, I don't have a license. And again, I wasn't granted a license, whether because of security or because of cost, whatever the case may be. But I needed to know the details of how this money was spent. Well, what would I do? Odds are I'd type up an email, send it out to the accounting group, who would have to stop what they're doing, run a query or a report out of Sage 300, take that data, dump it into Excel, email it back to me. Maybe it's got what I want, maybe it doesn't. But you know what? It's some extra work that the accounting groups had to do, and I've got a time lag waiting for it. Well, we can actually give you direct links that pull data out of, say, Sage 300 or any other electronic system that you have in your organization. This data is real time, up to the second. So what I'm doing here is running one that's showing me all of the purchase order and AP transactions that I have in the system. Now, this is intelligent. It's automatically limited it to the accounts that I have on screen and the month that I had selected at the time. So we're not bringing back 10 years of data. There's also security around this, so people aren't seeing accounts that they shouldn't be able to see, like payroll accounts or anything else along those lines. But what am I showing here? And again, you've got control over what appears here, but I'm seeing the account number, the account description. I can widen that a little bit. Transaction ID, the purchases amount, the tax amount, the total amount, some other values here. But maybe I want to sort it from lowest to highest, or highest to lowest, seeing how I'm spending that money. Or maybe I want to narrow that down to what were just the top 10 purchases that were made during that time, and actually how much was that account for those top 10 purchases? Well, that accounted to $19,000. Or maybe I want to do some other views of this data. So I'm going to clear my filters here. Maybe I want to group it by the account description. So now I see the person spending money on company cars, company meetings. Well, let me pull in the vendor as well. And now I can see here, okay, software. Well, they spent money with Adobe, with CamSoft, well, Mobile Warehouse. What did they spend with Mobile Warehouse? Well, they bought an upgrade to Office, but also a purchase of a tablet, but that got booked to the software account. So what I'm showing you here is how we've turned TrueSky from being a budget capture and budget reporting or even actual reporting tool into an analytical tool with this feature, right? Where you're giving your users instant access to the information that they need at their fingertips on their schedule. And we're offloading a lot of work that would normally fall on the shoulders of the accounting department. So this is how they get that in analytics and do those deep dives and to find out how are we spending our money, where are we going off, where are our variances, and these can be structured 1,000 different ways. Again, very useful tool, information at your fingertips, right? All right, so that's kind of a general view of the data capture and everything else. I'm going to show you 2 more things that TrueSky does, and then we'll open it up for any kind of questions here. So as I was saying, TrueSky is not just a budget capture or even a budget to report to actual reporting tool. You can actually do full-blown reporting on it, any kind of reporting that you need to do with data that we have. So including things like income statements, balance sheets, cash flow, subledger type reporting, customer sales reports, whatever the case may be. Now I'm going to show you kind of a basic income statement, but again, this can look however you want, can be as complex as you need it to be. But I'm going to highlight a couple other things that we do within TrueSky. Now I'm running this for one department, one location. This could be at a global level. This could be very detailed. You could do a subset of GL accounts, whatever the case may be, but this is generating everything in real time here. And now you can see I'm showing it by broad categories, revenue, expenses, and so forth. And I pull up total revenue. You can see I'm just doing a next level down. I'm breaking it out by project revenue, consulting versus project sales. On salary expenses, you can see my salary wages, hourly wages, or what have you. Instead of just seeing a year-to-date number, maybe I want to actually look over here, and you can see what I'm showing actuals for the first part of the year, but then a forecast for the rest so we can see where we're going. So again, if you want to do things like rolling forecasts, we can support that within TrueSky. All right, so now the final thing I'll show you is you can take this even one step further, and we can also be used as a dashboarding tool. Now we are not a dedicated BI visualization tool, all right? We leverage the charting and grafting capabilities that are built within TrueSky. So there are tools out there that do specific, and in the Sage world, that do nothing but budgeting and forecast, or that do nothing but data visualizations, right? And they specialize and they do those far better than what we do, right? Because that's the only thing they do. But if this is you just getting started with dashboarding, we can provide this to you along with your budgeting and forecasting capabilities. And this can be any kind of dashboarding that you want to do. The advantage of what we do is you get to leverage all of that knowledge of working with charts and graphs in Excel that you already know. So as an example here, I'll show you a financial dashboard, very high level, that allows you to compare, actuals and budgets by category. We've got some other different KPIs that are coming into play here, like employees by category or fuel cost or what have you. On the sales side, right, you have the ability to do things like top 5 customers, customers there, and average sales by employee and so forth. So again, all of these kind of things are capable within the TrueSky environment. So with that, I'm kind of done with showing you TrueSky. I've got one wrap-up slide, and then we will open it up for any kind of questions that you may have here. All right, so what are the benefits? Actually, I went to the start. Let me just cruise through those slides really quick, and I'll show you the final benefits of working with TrueSky. Sorry about that. Clicked the wrong button. All right, what are the benefits that you're going to get by deploying TrueSky with your organization? Well, first and foremost, you're going to have dramatically decreased cycle time on doing the budget, right? Clients have cut their time down by 50% or even more. And if you're looking at doing quarterly reforecasting or even that holy grail of monthly reforecast, we can help you there. You're going to get an interface, both from a end user as well as a financial group control that's designed from the ground up to be controlled by the finance group. So setting your security, running your integrations, creating your new templates for assignments or reports, these are all things that the finance group is going to be able to control in the organization. Thanks to the tools and the controls that we also put into play, you're going to get far greater accuracy out of the numbers that your people put in. And at the end of the day, you're going to get not just numbers, but you're going to get actual all the notes, the thought process that's gone into this. So you're going to actually get useful information that you can use to make business decisions. So with that, I'm going to open it up for any kind of questions that you have. I know Jim's going to come back on. I know if you have, if you'd like to learn more about TrueSky, go ahead and contact Jim here. His information's up on the screen. But with that, again, welcome back, Jim, and I will take any questions. I hope that you have found this informative. I hope you've liked what you've seen, and I do thank you for taking time out of your day to watch this presentation.
Okay, thanks, Alan. Okay, I did have a couple questions that came through on the chat window. If we have multiple companies, are we able to consolidate them into one?
Yes, so absolutely. So again, we have an out-of-the-box integration with Sage 300 that takes into account multiple companies. It works, it's in an ideal world, you know, you've got the same number of dimensions, the segments are all the same and everything else. But if you've got completely different kind of structures, we can still consolidate. We just have to go through a mapping routine first. But yes, you can consolidate, you can budget independently for each of those companies and then consolidate up from a reporting point of view.
Okay. And then another one, you showed that you can have multiple versions of the budget. Can you compare them?
Yes, so I didn't show that in that thing, but again, on any of the reports, I can show version 1 compared to version 2, compared to actual, to any level of variance among those, compare as many. You can even make it interactive, so pick which, you know, budget versions you want to compare between, so you can do that as well.
Okay, another question. What is the typical deployment times? How long does it take to roll out?
All right, that's one of the tough ones to answer because it really depends, like anything, on the scope and what you're doing, okay? So, you know, as you said, with TrueSky, you could be doing just expenses, but you could be doing compensation, you could be doing CapEx, you could be doing projects, revenues, and so forth. On the short time, you know, projects have gone as short as 2 weeks. On the upper level, they've gone 4 or 5 months. Those tend to be ones where you're doing the whole thing, where you're going all the different business processes and you're doing process re-engineering. Typically, it's somewhere between 6 to 8 weeks for a typical client, and that's taking into account that you're not focusing 100% on us. It's like, okay, we're going to work some stuff on Tuesday morning and we can't do anything until next Monday afternoon kind of thing. So.
Okay, thank you. I think those are all the questions I had in the chat window, so I'm going to open up the mic to everybody. Doesn't look like it's... that's interesting. Oh, sorry, let's try that. No, it's not letting me unmute. Maybe people have got themselves muted. Is there any other questions? Oh, there's Christopher. Yeah.
No, I was just testing for you, just to make sure it was working.
And I see Steve.
Sorry.
I see Steve.
Didn't mean to get you excited there.
And Steve, I see you finally made it onto the call. Thank you for joining us. So if there are no other questions, we'll wrap up. Thank you everybody for taking the time today. And Alan, that was very, very informative. Really appreciate your time today. Just as a follow-up, I will be contacting you all in the next week or so just to follow up, and we will be sending out an email with the link to the recorded session, as well as we'll post it on our new YouTube channel. So if there's no other questions, we'll wrap it up for today. Thanks everybody. Thank you.
Thank you everyone.